प्रविश्य मम वाचमिमां प्रसुप्तां सञ्जीवयत्यखिलशक्तिधरस्वधाम्ना अन्यांश्च हस्तचरणश्रवणत्वगादीन् प्राणान्नमो भगवते पुरुषाय तुभ्यं प्राणान्नमो भगवते पुरुषाय तुभ्यम्.
So, like that here also they are saying, where lies the bondage and where lies the liberation? In choosing from life, in the life situation, by what will take us towards freedom and liberation, and what will bind us, that the Sattvika Buddhi will able to tell us. Just now we were discussing that bondage and liberation, that Sattvika Jnana and all, that which will take us to the oneness, unchanging, impersonal level, and which will make us small, selfish, constricted. Now, pravritti and nivritti. Pravritti means it's a tendency to get involved in the worldliness. Tendency to get involved in worldliness. And nivritti is withdrawing from worldliness. Not to get engaged more and more into worldliness. Suppose, and the next one is karya akarya. That means what is to be done and what is not to be done. Now there is a difference between the two. Karya is determined by the dharma adharma. That is what is duty and what is not duty, what is to be done and what is not to be done. That is according to the moral code, according to the code of dharma. So when we do something wrong, is it a wrongdoing or the right? That is the karya and akarya. That is, am I doing the right thing or am I doing the wrong thing? Pravritti and nivritti is not that way. It is much subtler. That am I going to increase the burden? It is very common everywhere we do. We start collecting materials and putting them in the loft, and after some time when the loft is full, you ask for another storeroom to be made. That storeroom becomes full. And when something is necessary, you are not able to find out from anywhere. But you go on collecting things that someday I will need it, someday I will need it. Do you not do it? This is pravritti. You can give more examples to me. If it is an interactive session, I would have asked all of you to tell one by one what is the pravritti. You have enough money, you have a building or maybe 2-3 buildings you have, but you construct another 5 buildings to rent it out and have more money out of it. You cannot lie in more than one bed. You cannot cook in more than one kitchen. One sabji here, one sabji in Telco, one sabji in Agrico. Can you live like that? So our need is very little. We cannot have more than that. And we increase like that and give it on rent, and then we get into court case and so many other things also. So by increasing the property, are we enjoying or are we suffering? And then you go to Kali Mandir and hamara tenant ko bhaga dijiye. Is it not? So this pravritti nivritti is like that. It is not that you are doing anything wrong, but you are unnecessarily increasing your burden. That is the pravritti marga. एक वाइफ को संभाल नहीं सकते हैं, 3 वाइफ चाहिए. It is pravritti marga. Nivritti means where I can live peacefully, simply, not getting indulging in many things. Suppose you like to study, after a long time you have become old. You want to learn a subject. Why don't you learn? You have to get a PhD or an MA or MSc in that age. But people do it. At the age of 70, they work for PhD. It is increasing the burden. But in a way it is good. Perhaps they think that unless we do PhD, I will not be relieved of my other family burdens or so. That is different. But actually it is an orientation towards getting another degree. Loading ourselves with one more degree, that we do like that. So a Sattvika Buddhi will be able to distinguish between this, where am I getting involved in more and more worldliness, and how to get rid of the worldliness and get on the path of the truth without the encumbrance. Then karya is definitely much easier, that you find out what is dharma and adharma. But there also we make lot of mistakes. Because our greed, our partiality, it covers, it envelops the real sense of dharma and adharma. I know of a family where Swamiji used to say that the person was a crorepati. He had crores, it's a very big businessman. His brother's children were very poor. So when he is dividing his property, he is giving everything to his son and not giving anything to the brother's children. So Swamiji was saying that at least some balance should be there. They are your own brother's children. And by giving so much of property to your son, are you not going to spoil your son? First of all, this property giving, our scriptures do not allow at all. The best property is hard-earned property. The inferior property is what you inherit. Further inferior property is what you get as dowry. All these things are spoken of in the scripture. That means all these practices were there in the society. So, karya, what is to be done and not to be done also, it is not so easy. We have to be clear-headed in that. So that is Sattvika Buddhi's job, to always find out what is to be done and what is not to be done. I have told you about a story of, in our Trichur ashram, one very devoted Vaidyan, Ayurvedic physicians are called Vaidyan, was there. He has passed away now. He had lot of landed property. So once he came crying to our Swamiji that the government is taking away one of his landed property for putting up a radio station there. So Swamiji told him that, Balakrishnan, what were you doing with this land? Like a Maidan, it is lying with jungle and all. You have not done anything with this land. The government will give you some money also. May not be the money you expect from such a property, but government will give you some money. And by that what will happen? A radio station, the Trichur will have a radio station. And it will be so much beneficial for the people. You yourself would never have done such a good work for the people. Now because of government's effort, that you are also becoming a bhagidar of the punya, that such a good work, social work is being done. Happily, joyously, you simply give it to the government. What they have asked, give it a little more. And be happy. Initially he was quite, but after Swamiji explained everything to him, he went back very happily. But again after a few years came back that another property is Swamiji again said that, did you not feel joyous after giving up that property? Yes, Swamiji, I was very happy after giving that. Give this also, you will feel all the more happy. So this is pravritti and nivritti. It is not karya. It has nothing, adharma is there even if it doesn't give or anything like that. In this case it was almost forcefully. But naturally also we can give. Our Swamiji's family had 27 acres or 26. It was 18 plus government gave something altogether. It was 26 acres property where they had put their first ashram. It is called Jnana Ashram. So initially all of them, the whole family, the Sannyasin brothers as well as non-Sannyasin brothers and father and everybody decided that when Swamiji and his brother took up sannyasa, that the whole property they will convert into trust. So some suggested that only part of it to be done. But Swamiji insisted, no. When we are transferring, the whole property can be made into a trust. So the whole, by that time it was 26 acres or so, the whole property was given up in a trust. And very soon after a few years, they given off the trust also to Vishwa Hindu Parishad. Left that. Purushottam Swamiji made a small place, started living there, and Swamiji came away to our present ashram area. That 26, we have a very little area compared to that, and that had the 26 acres of property. If they had been sticking to that property, what would have happened? Nothing would have happened. The sattva guna will enhance the sensitivity to everything. So you will not be able to sustain the life peacefully. It will disturb. So we have to develop the gunatita bhumi, where remaining sattva guni also, you will be able to withstand the whole universe with all its divergence. Even the criminal, the worst of the criminal, it will not upset you. You understand that this is what the world is. It is just like if we think of something like Ishvara or God himself, that he is creating all the varieties in the world, it is hosted in God, and he is not disturbed with that. That is why we think of the Nataraja dancing, the destruction is the Nataraja's dance. That means we have a fear for destruction, but actually destruction is part of the creation. As creation, destruction, they are all two sides of the same coin. So our sadhana should be to enhance the sattva guna to the extent possible. Then finally go over to cultivate the gunatita bhumi also. That is not getting disturbed by anything and not getting bound by the other day I explained, sattva guna also binds by sukha sangena badnati, jnana sangena chanagha. That also binds. So we have to get over that also. These were actually discussed last year, but I repeated them. Now, they are going to, we have started the discussion on buddhi dhriti, and then it will be followed by sukha. That means sattvika buddhi, rajasika buddhi, tamasika buddhi, then correspondingly dhriti also. We should understand that the buddhi is by which we understand. And dhriti is whatever I have understood, I retain. Now, a sattvika buddhi will automatically lead to sattvika dhriti. When the sattvika buddhi functions, it will lead to sattvika dhriti. But it is not the full. A sattvika buddhi also, it will not have the sattvika dhriti always. It will always work for the sattvika dhriti. But unless we change our preferences, our evaluation of life, what are our taste for life? Say, what are the things I like most? And what are the things I want to become? Our shraddha for, whatever we are intending to, what is our evaluation? Which we are giving the highest position in life, supreme position in life. On that, the dhriti will be there. Dhriti means it has come from the retention or dharana, that means to hold. So, dhriti also has the persistence, you can say persistence means whatever we have the persistence, we carry on with that. And also you can say it is the retentivity. Suppose we have listened to the truth, but because of our worldly association, we are not able to retain the truth. So we understood, but we are not able to retain. So when Nachiketa in Kathopanishad, he passed the exam, passed all the tests given by Yamaraja, Yamaraja is telling that, oh Nachiketa, you are a Satya Dhruti. What does it mean? That means when the truth is given, you are able to retain it. So it will not be like a leaky vessel that every time you feel the truth and by the time you go home, the whole truth has fallen off from the hole or from the bamboo basket. It is not like that. So this Satya Dhruti we have to develop. That will not happen until we evaluate life very well. Finally, what we will become, it entirely depends on what we value most. If you value riches most, you are supposed to become rich. If you value fame most, you are supposed to become famous. If you value this ultimate goal most, that ultimate truth or the ultimate purity, then naturally you will also become like that. Yo yat shraddha saeva saha. This is 17th chapter, 3rd verse. Shraddha mayoyam purushaha yo yat shraddha saeva saha. Man is an embodiment of his shraddha. Shraddha means it is a evaluation. What we are giving the supreme value. That we will have our most attention assiduous attention towards that, whatever we are valuing most. So it is the Shraddha which determines what we are going to become inward. Outward, whatever may happen, but inward in our mind, what we are going to become. So, the dhriti will definitely be depending on the taste, on the evaluation in life. Otherwise, although the satya we will understand, but we will not be able to retain. Now, whatever we understand by buddhi, we try to retain it by dhriti. Sattvika buddhi will lead to normally to sattvika dhriti, and both together, sattvika dhriti will lead to sattvika sukha also. That we will see. Now, when we are saying buddhi, there is something more to be understood. That buddhi is basically, it is coming from an understanding. Generally, what buddhi we are utilizing, intelligence or intellect, we are analyzing things. So it is, we in Sanskrit it is a khanda buddhi, that means fragmented way of observation. Suppose we want to understand the elementary particles in a certain matter, we have to analyze it by fragmentation, going into it. And suppose we want to understand who is a good person and who is a bad person, we have to differentiate, a differential way of understanding. But there is something, the buddhi is actually originating from a wholesome understanding that we should understand. There, the buddhi, the word used in Bhagavad Gita, buddhi only is used, but in Kenopanishad, it is used as pratibodha. In Bhagavad Gita also prajna is used, prajna, pratibodha, these are the terms. In Buddhism, it is used as prajna also is used and bodhi is used. In Rig Veda, the buddh, it is coming from, buddhi is coming from buddh, bodha. Buddh means awakening. We say Buddha, Shuddha Buddha. We sing also, chant also, Prabuddham Vimuktam. This Prabuddham means Prakrishna Rupena Buddha. That is one who has awakened very well. So when we chant that at the end of the session or so, we pray that may we become very well awakened. Awakened to what? Awakened to our real identity, to the truth. Prabuddham, Prakrishna Rupena Buddham. So, it has Buddh dhatu as such means the awakening. So, one is understanding. You know that in many cases the scientists will go on analyzing with mathematics, this, that, and on many things they do. Then one fine morning they get up and the truth dawns in them. It is the statement of many scientists and others also, you will find. The real truth dawns when we are not analyzing. We have done enough of analysis, that basis will be there. But the truth simply dawns in our mind. That is the real understanding, the fundamental understanding in which the reality reveals. In another sense, suppose there are various kinds of perception. That one is the pratyaksha, that means whatever is in front of our sense organs. So that is a differential perception. We see the color, we hear the sound, everything, that perceptions are coming. There is something called paroksha. Paroksha means inferential. If you really go into it, you will find that most of our knowledge are inferential. Pratyaksha knowledges are there. We are knowing various things by direct perception. But the entire scientific knowledge is actually inferential. That is, seeing something, we infer that this is it. Suppose nobody has seen the elementary particles, but seeing some experimental results, we say that it is electron, it is proton, or it is still something different from that, whatever it is changing every day. This is because it is our conclusion from whatever we are seeing. What we are seeing is the eyes. Suppose in a cloud chamber, we see a path, a smoky line. That we are seeing with the eyes or with the microscope. But what we are determining from that, it is entirely an inference. If line goes like this, it is electron. If it goes like this, it is proton. If it goes without any division, it is neutron. Everything is inference. Even God is an inference. Why? Because we are seeing the world in front of us and there is everything is running by causality. So there must be a cause for the universe also, for the creation also, and that is the God. So it is an inference. But there is something different from in Western philosophy or in English, there are only these two. That is pratyaksha and paroksha. That is direct perception and inference. These are the two kinds of knowledge. In our Shastra, we have a third kind of knowledge, which is called aparoksha. Aparoksha. It is neither pratyaksha nor paroksha, but it is aparoksha. This aparoksha is a direct perception without the employment of buddhi, so-called differential buddhi, and the senses. That is what the Atma is. The realization of the self is aparoksha. It is called aparoksha anubhuti. There is a book, aparoksha anubhuti. It is an anubhuti, but it is aparoksha. We can get an idea about what is aparoksha. Suppose that I have a mind. Is it a direct perception of the indriyas? Are we seeing our mind with the senses? No. Is it an inference? No. You know that you have a mind. Is it not so? Still further you can go, that I am. That I am. Even if all our indriyas goes, I am, that feeling is not going to go. You may not know your body, you may not see your body, you may not know anything, but that I amness in us is not going to go. And if you analyze and infer that I am, it is never so. Even if I prove by some logic and so that you are not, are you going to accept? You will not accept. Because you know you are. This knowledge that I am, it is called aparoksha. But actually the aparoksha anubhuti we use in a very special sense. But this is also aparoksha knowledge. That is a direct perception without the perceiving indriyas and without any inference of the buddhi. It's a direct knowledge, you can say. Direct knowledge that I am. That amness is a direct knowledge. Exactly same that the realization of our real identity happens as when there is no buddhi, there is no indriyas, everything is silent. That is why in Kathopanishad, the sloka I have said many times that Yada panchavatishthante jnanani manasa saha buddhishchana vicheshtati tamahu paramam gatim. This is explaining the Nirvikalpa Samadhi. What is that? Yada panchavatishthante jnanani, when all the five jnanendriyas, the senses of perception, they are all avatishthante, means they are not sleeping. We are not sleeping. The indriyas are awake, but they are not functioning. They are not moving. Just like now my leg is steady. It can move, it is not sleeping, but it is not acting now. Like that all the indriyas are non-acting, but awake. Manasa saha, even the mind also. That means mind can think, but it is not thinking. It is silent. Buddhishchana vicheshtati. The Buddhist work is always to find out and resolve, that analyze and come to a conclusion. So even when you are meditating, the buddhi will go on acting that, is this the self, is this not, like that. Or is it the ultimate, is it not, like that the buddhi will function. So when the buddhi also is still, everything is still, not that they are sleeping. Tamahu paramam gatim. Why? Because at that point, only the Atma, it reveals itself. That is, the consciousness reveals itself. So, for that revelation, neither the buddhi is there, nor the indriyas are functioning. It's a direct revelation. Now, this is the fundamental truth on which everything that in our country, the cultural and everything has been based on that. That is, fundamentally, this is our real identity. Based on this aparoksha anubhuti, that this is our soul, this is our Atma. Now, when that oneness, which is actually not oneness, it is transcendental. Because when we say one, there is a many and all those concepts are there. Here there is no concept at all. It is a transcendental reality. But in a way you can say it is one for our expression. From that all the divergence is coming. The whole world divergence is coming from that oneness. Now our normal, our usual lifestyle, our engagement with the world, it always takes us to this divergence. That is, although we are that transcendental oneness within, that is our real identity, we are always becoming many through interacting with the many things, this I like, that I don't like, etc. Always there is a divergence. Now the purpose of any spiritual sadhana is to take us to the, again, converge our everything to that central oneness truth. Now because the Indian culture, the music, the art, everything, the ragas, they are based on this fundamental truth. So even through music also we try to attain the soul. When they sing, the real singers of our country, they would get the touch of the soul through music. And what is that soul? That is the silence. That is through the music we reach the silence. That means through the variety of ragas, variety of swaras and all, they are all hosted by that single substratum. They are all playing on the single substratum, like the waves, multiple waves playing on the sea. So we always like to remain aware of the sea. Although we are in the waves, everything we are knowing, but we have to be aware of the sea, the substratum, the one substratum on which this infinite variety is playing. So our culture is always referred to as unity in diversity. You will find everywhere that we have never restricted the diversity. Diversity is allowed. In puja, we had 33 crores of devas and devis. Gods and goddesses, 33 crores. Why? Because there was at that time 33 crores of people in our country. That means it says that as many people are there, so many gods and goddesses are there. Why? Because the God is a concept of our mind. Even if 2 million people are worshipping Shiva, the Shiva in each mind is different. And that is your Shiva, what you are worshipping. So diversity is never condemned, or nobody tries to rule out the diversity. What our country tries to do through our culture, music, everything, is to anchor us to this unity. That you remain anchored there, and from there you play with all the diversity. Like the Kali's dance on Shiva. Shiva is the unity there, the soul. And on which nature, Kali represents nature. She is dancing with Mundamala and everything, with Khadga, Mundamala, everything over Shiva. Like that, this is the truth of nature, that the multifarious, infinitely various nature is dancing on that one truth, the consciousness or the Atma or the Brahman, that is it called. So whatever analysis we do, the purpose is to take us to this oneness from the diversity. If you understand that, then all these will become easy. Why? Because Sattva Guna has the nature of taking us from the differential notion to a comprehensive notion, from diversity to unity.